Now that we're done catching up with Rico's little story and tips, it's time to enter the third area of the game, the mines. Things take a bit of a more mechanical feel this time around, as apparently mining is a lot more advanced in the far future. But either way, we immediately start off by seeing our basic slappies of this particular area, the gill chicks. Gill chicks actually operate fairly differently from the other slappies of the previous two areas. Every single hit actually knocks them onto their back for a while, so it's easy to actually keep them toppled over and away from hurting you. However, if they do successfully slap you, it's a couple of different chances of hitting you since they punch twice. Not only that, but they'll sometimes actually cause slow on you when they hit you. They even have a little special surprise for if you leave them alone too long and you decide not to get close to them. Don't worry, we'll definitely be seeing that before this particular stage is done. It's not exactly the most fun extra little bit, but it certainly keeps things a little bit more challenging this time around. Also of note, I've decided to stay on the Ultima server for the rest of this particular playthrough, as quite honestly, the extra EXP isn't such a bad thing. It means I'll be a bit overleveled for a lot of things, but it'll just help things go more smoothly, especially once we get to the later difficulties. On top of that, honestly, it's the more stable of the two most of the time. But yes, the mines are actually extremely pretty looking, especially after having to deal with the caves. So it's easily one of my favorite areas of episode 1, as we finally actually see some of the nicer stuff that this game can do, even if it is just still big open rooms. There's an example of slow, by the way. Slow does exactly what it says on the tin. It heavily slows down all your movement, including your attacking animations, so it can actually be a bit of a pain to keep things from getting a counterattack on you with them. The gill chicks don't actually have very much HP, so they're not that bad to deal with. The whole thing is basically just making sure to keep knocking them over so they can't counterattack. This makes the mines actually one of the easier areas in the game overall, just because the most generic enemy type can actually be dealt with rather easily. It does get much more difficult in later difficulties of the game though, and makes it more fitting for being the third stage. Another little thing about the mines is that there's often little side rooms that just have 1 or 2 boxes in them. You saw these in previous stages a little bit, but they show up all over the place in this particular one. We'll see a good example of that here in a moment, but first we have another new enemy type. The Canadynes are actually extremely annoying. They'll do one of two things. They'll either stay in midair and try to snipe you with electricity, or they'll start zipping about wildly and trying to get in close to zap you. Either way, it's kind of annoying. The reason for that is because they actually cause the shock status. This is one of the most annoying statuses in the game because it's basically temporary paralysis that you can't do much about. You can use soul atomizers to heal it off, but there are times where it happens so often that there's just no point in using the item because you'll just have it happen immediately again. There are other ways of getting around it, but we won't be seeing that in this playthrough for the most part, just because these come from drops that are in much higher difficulties. The mines also tend to be absolutely littered with traps. So being a droid here actually helps out a lot because, well, if you're just a human, you'd be walking face first into them. The big thing is to make sure to just kind of start memorizing where they are. You can usually get around the traps as long as you know where they are, or you can bring trap vision, I guess. It's an item I've never really bothered with just because it only works for one room, so I've just never really felt the point. Even though I've actually memorized where a lot of these traps are by now, I just don't feel the need to actually get rid of them because most of the time they don't do enough. If anything, they just tend to waste time since there's a lot of confused traps that'll make you derp around in one place for a bit. Now the big thing with Canadynes is when they're zipping around like that, it's pretty much impossible to hit them with a gun because the bullet itself will outright miss as they zip off to the side. So usually luring them in close and getting them to try to attack you actually works out the best because it gets them to hold still. There's going to be a few instances as well where I go out of my way to just get a whole bunch of extra boxes. Because right now, honestly, our gear kind of sucks, and there's a lot of upgrades that we could be finding in the mines, so I might as well just keep an eye out to see if we can get some upgrades, especially to things like our handgun, which we really should have found a replacement for by now. Caves was not exactly generous to us, so we're going to have to hope that this is a little bit better. And we're going to do the same thing as before with our mag, just constantly feeding it antidotes, and I'm going to turn on the mag timer as well, just so I can keep a little bit more track of it. We're not going to dart home every single time we run out of food, because that would require far too much inventory management, but we'll at least do it often enough that we can keep feeding it decently steadily, probably once per area. probably the most depressing state is our armor. Seriously, we still have a basic frame and a basic shield. These are the type of things you can find in Forest. Thankfully, though, as I've said, defensive stats don't really matter all that much in this game, since they make a pretty marginal difference at best, even in lower difficulties. So having outdated equipment is not that bad of a thing. The big thing is just trying to make sure to not get hit. Oh hey, here's another example of those trap hallways that you can just walk through as long as you bring up a menu. The big thing is as long as you're not targeting anything, you can run through freely, because targeting causes that slow walk animation, which gets you kind of stuck and causes you to faceplant the traps. Dark rooms often have a switch just like this to turn the lights back on, so you can just run straight ahead and try to grab those. Depending on the room, this can be more dangerous than anything. There's also certain circumstances where there is not a switch to turn the lights back on, and you gotta fight in pitch blackness, which really isn't that difficult. You just have to use the radar and look for your targeting reticule. Another interesting thing about the mines, it doesn't exactly have multiple copies of the same basic Slappy. Rather than just doing palette swap equals stronger monster, there is one other variety of kill chicks, but it's more of a just new spin on the same thing, as opposed to just being a slightly stronger version of the same thing. So it ends up being just a really unique area of the game, because it doesn't really follow all the same rules as the previous ones did. Also, here's an example of a trap that the game likes to pull. There's two different colored laser fences on this gate. If you deactivate the one that's right beside it, you're gonna faceplant into all those traps if you're not a droid. There's another laser switch hidden off in the side room that gets rid of the proper one. And hey, that's often trapped too! This one's actually completely fake. This switch will be the one that actually deactivates the other laser fence, whereas the other one, it's just a trap. The traps will go ahead and trigger the second you walk near that, and you'll feel sad. This is the big thing about droids in general, honestly. It saves you from a lot of the tedium and just annoying nonsense that tends to happen involving traps. That said, it's not foolproof. There are traps that even they can end up falling for because they can't see them, but it does certainly help out with a lot of different things. So, you know, between that and being able to use traps of your own, droids are actually pretty good. The main issue is having to deal with the full damage of different monsters and everything. Also, that was an example of another new enemy, the Cenobite. I'll talk more about that here in a moment, since I know a second one's going to spawn. This particular room is the halfway point landmark for Mines 1. Much like with caves, you'll be able to tell how far along you are in the stage just by seeing these little landmark rooms. Mines 2 will have one of them as well. And hey, there's our man getting hungry again. These things, seriously, they just get hungry so rapidly, but it takes so long to actually max them out. You'll probably be a good 15 hours into your character by the time you max it out, if you're doing it efficiently. I mean, you can max it faster if you don't really care about what levels the mag's getting, but they're kind of important, you know? And they're not that hard to min-max. Speaking of mags, but we'll talk about that in a moment, because here's the Cenobites. So these guys, they still have the same sort of AI as a basic Slappy, but they try to punch you twice with their daggers, and then they do this twice before leaping away from you. They love to do that jump and attack whenever they're too far away from you, so you definitely have to keep an eye on them as they're extremely mobile. Minnows actually have a few other tricks they can do when they leap away as well. We may or may not see those since it's selective of when they want to use them, but they don't really do anything more dangerous. Having them just walk up and punching you in the face is a lot more dangerous than anything else that they do. There's going to be a lot of different varieties of Sinnohs. This seems to be the development team's favorite robot enemy, to say the least. We won't be seeing many more of them in this episode, but they do show up again later. Now, what I was talking about with mags is the mines is actually one of the places where you can find extra mags. They can turn up just about anywhere, but every time I've seen them drop, it's been the most common in mines, especially on the lower difficulties, so normal and hard for the most part. So just something to keep in mind. Oh, and here's another example of traps being hovering over switches. Do note that the traps over switches, you never have to actually press them. Those switches are fake and don't do anything. They're just there to get you blown up. Honestly, the mines is full of enemy types that are the stuff of nightmares once you hit the highest difficulty in the game. Everything's not so bad on normal through very hard, but the second you hit ultimate, everything just goes nuts. It's definitely something that I'm gonna have to show in a later video, just going over the differences between the other difficulties and Ultimate in general, because this place goes from one of the easiest stages in the game to one of the absolute most monstrous and most likely to kill you. Which is funny, because it's one of the only places in the game that doesn't actually have instant death on Ultimate. It just has likely to instant kill you things. Do you know how guild tricks work and how easy it is to kind of crowd control them? The game also seems happier to actually throw a lot more enemies at you at once. As a conveniently timed level up. I mean, I would have been fine either way, but still kind of funny. Because yeah, I mean, there's a lot more enemies in this room than what you would normally see. There's another example of what I was talking about with the Canonines, where they choose to just fly around and try to zap you instead. That lightning bolt can cause shock too, so basically everything they do can end up shocking you, which is just great. Something that's a little different from previous areas too. There's actually more than one set of spawns for this room, for example. Oh, and here we have another new enemy type, the Sinnoh Gold. This does exactly what the Sinnoh Beats do, except when it leaps back, it actually heals everything around it. They generally have a less attack power than the Sinnoh Beats, so in some ways they're less dangerous, but the AI otherwise is exactly the same. But yes, what I mean about multiple spawn paths is basically that there's going to be two different groups of enemies. One that spawns in and then sets off another set, and then yet another that does the same thing. For example, in this room, when we killed off just the guild chicks, more guild chicks spawned. When we killed off the Canonines, more Canonines spawned. So there's basically two different sets of enemy spawns crammed into the same room. Here's another new enemy type, the Canyon. When you destroy the red one, all the remaining Canonines will actually start spiraling at you and try to explode. They try to all explode on you at the same time, which does pretty massive amounts of damage. And they'll also cause shock with the explosions, so yes, that's another thing that they do that can cause shock. The cannons are rather interesting, because they'll react differently depending on what you destroy first. On top of that, the Canonines, part of the cannon circle, are actually worth less than normal Canonines, so there's that too. For those of you after shiny, sparkly, rare things, make sure to take out the canyon in particular, because if you don't manage to take that one out, you won't even get its drop at all. So remember, that one's super important. That said, there's very few instances of them actually existing, so usually their rare drop isn't all that good. I mean, here's another one now, but you usually only see about 5 or 6 of these guys in an entire run of the mines. Another thing of note about the mines, it's actually a lot shorter than the caves was. It's only 2 areas long, and the areas in general are actually a lot shorter than the caves ones too. Also, there's a demonstration of what happens when you go after the Canonines first. Once it gets down to 2 Canonines and the canyon, they just teleport away, causing you to miss out on the rare drop, as I mentioned, and missing out on the bulk of the experience points. So, make sure to focus the red guy, okay? And here we have another little side room. There's actually often a lot of these where it's just one Sinnoh hanging out in the side room, usually just guarding some boxes, like these guys. We actually did manage to find an upgrade to our handgun at least, getting the auto gun. It's like the brand, it's just the second level of the handguns, so it's blue. It's really the only difference. Much higher attack power though, so it will come in handy. Honestly, what would be really nice is if we could get an upgrade to one of the multi-hitting weapons. That said, the Partisans are considered later game than the swords are, so we're more likely to see the next level of sword than we are Partisan. I'm not even sure if the next level of the Partisan can drop in this stage. I think it only shows up in the next one. It's a handy thing to have, though, so there is that. Also, it looks like I forgot to go to one of the side rooms to finish activating this door, so you know what? Take some time to enjoy the kind of nice, peaceful music of the mines, because this is gonna be a little bit of backtracking. Okay, that's enough of a music break. Let's go ahead and head back to where we were before, as now we can go get even more prizes. This is kind of a big deal in Mines 1, because you'll be getting a heck of a lot of boxes that could be dropping you some improved equipment. It's one of those things where, okay, maybe the equipment upgrade's not super important, but you can end up finding new weapon types as well. So it's one of those things, if you haven't gotten all the weapon types you're looking for yet, then go ahead and look around, see if you can get some extra stuff. On top of that, if this is your first character, you tend to be extremely poor at this time, so it's not such a bad idea to go ahead and just grab more stuff to sell. Because while Maceta is not super important, until you're done feeding your mag, it's still helpful to have, to say the least. There are purposes for it later on as well, they're just a little bit unconventional, because, you know, you can go ahead and buy some more stuff, but you don't really need it. Honestly, the big money sink is just paying for all your different healing items. Whether it be forces and their fluids, or androids and their mates, it's usually a good idea to stay stocked up. These aren't all that expensive though, so if you just pick up a few things here and there, you can always pay for them in the future too. Especially since, once you get into the higher difficulties, the average, selling rate of a lot of the things you pick up is much, much higher. So you'll be able to fill up that bank in no time. Mag feeding's definitely the biggest money sink, but the other things such as special attacks that could use money for extra damage. That was actually pretty good. But with that one though, that's the end of Mines 1, so I'll see you next time in the second part of the Mines.